Hello and welcome to Student Affairs Live, the weekly web show for student affairs professionals in higher education. We broadcast on the Higher Ed Live network. Tune in to Student Affairs Live every other Wednesday at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and join the conversation today on Twitter using the Higher Ed Live hashtag. I'm your host, Tony Duty, and I'm pleased to be joining you from my professional home at Rutgers State University of New Jersey. I'm delighted to be serving as co-host of Student Affairs Live with my good friend and colleague, Heather Shea Gasser. And I'm also super fortunate to have the ever-talented Robin Janice monitoring the back channel today and keeping conversations fresh and alive. So please give her a shout out and try and join our conversation today. If you got a pressing question for our panel, please send it her way and she'll throw back something over at me from across the room, a book, softcover please, or some other large object to get my attention. In a moment I'll introduce you to my guests, but we can't do that without first giving a shout out to the sponsors that make Student Affairs Live possible. Higher Ed Live is sponsored and produced by M. Stoner, a marketing communications firm that works with education institutions on branding, strategy, web design, and more. We are also delighted to announce that effective today, October 15th, ACPA, College Student Educators International, has signed a strategic agreement with M. Stoner's Higher Ed Live as a primary sponsor of Student Affairs Live. As ACPA adapts to the evolving needs of members, they are committed to providing affordable professional development and quality online education through this important and timely initiative. So finally, I am pleased to have join me today three inspirational leaders in student affairs. And for those viewing today's show, full biographies of our guests are on our Higher Ed Live post for today's show. And guests, thank you for joining me. And can you, each of you, briefly share with us your name, your institution, your organization, and your current role, and perhaps your favorite superhero character? We'll start with Terry. You want to go first?
Hi, everyone. I'm Terry Bump. I'm the Vice President for University Relations and Student Affairs for American Campus Communities. We're a publicly traded real estate investment trust serving 150 universities nationally. My superhero character, I believe, I'm just going to go with Wonder Woman. How's that?
That's a good one.
Happy to be here. Thank you, Tony.
You're welcome. All right, David.
Hello, everyone. I'm live from New York City, where I'm the Associate Director of Student Housing and Residence Life and also Student Conduct at the City University of New York. And I would say that the superhero I most identify with would probably be Superman.
Very good. It's one of my son's favorites. And Zeb, how about you?
Hi, Zeb Davenport here in Indianapolis, Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs at IUPUI. And David, you took my superhero, so I will say Batman.
Excellent, Batman. Another one of my child's Halloween costumes coming up. So I want to start, Terry, I had the pleasure of watching you present at a conference in Atlantic City this past June on this topic, on the sponsorship effect, and it was incredibly enlightening, practical, and frankly entertaining. And the presentation that I want to note was developed from some of the research and writing of Dr. Sylvia Ann Hewlett, who wrote the book Executive Presence and Forget a Mentor, Find a Sponsor. You also had a panel of guests for your presentation, and I thought perhaps we could recreate that same that really good dynamic dialogue that you created back at the conference. And we'll talk about later. You're actually been taking this on the road and presenting at several conferences, including tomorrow, and we'll talk more about that later. But I want to start off with the first question, Terry. Most people are familiar with the concept of mentors, but in your presentations you make a very clear distinction between sponsorship and mentorship. Can you explain?
Yes, it's a very clear difference, and what Sylvia Hewlett did in her books is define it, and when you can define something and give it language, it allows all of us to really know what the rules are, and knowing the rules is the first step. So the difference primarily between a sponsor and a mentor is that sponsors really activate around you. They can use the power to make things happen, specifically in areas where Oh, it's a promotion opportunities, raises, getting you in the door. There are very specific ways that a sponsor will put their name on you and act on your behalf, where a mentor may provide advice, navigation assistance. The sponsor puts high-octane, heavy-duty power behind it and accelerates the movement.
Cool. So Zeb, this is a question I get all the time from folks. Why can't I just be great at my job? Why do I actually need a sponsor? Shouldn't my work speak for itself?
So first of all, Tony, I would say you still need to be great at your job, and yes, your work still should speak for itself. We're talking about this concept called sponsoring or sponsorship, and in my opinion, it really is a new name for what has been in practice for many, many years, and we often call it network with the prefix of good old boy networking. And in fact, it's the same thing with a different spin, a different twist, and a lot of people, I think, in my opinion, go through life and think that there are some individuals who are born on third base and they go through life believing that they hit a triple. And in fact, there are some people who go through life and have to get first, steal second, and get bunted or sacrificed to third. And sponsoring is that sacrifice where somebody takes you under their wing and provides opportunities for you and gets you to third base. So yes, we do need to work hard. We do need to allow our work to speak for itself, but quite frankly, we level the playing ground when we have a sponsor.
Excellent. So David, I want to bring you into the conversation. How do we identify potential sponsors? And how over the course of your career, as you progress, do sponsors change?
I think that's a great question, and I think one of the things you really need to be intentional about how you identify a potential sponsor. That individual should be someone of senior level administrative capacity that has the opportunity to have access to certain key departmental organizational projects, the opportunity for you to really engage in high-level community work, and also the opportunity to place you in a space where you can have access to key decision-making opportunities. So I think that's what you want to look for when you see a sponsor, someone that is doing those type of things and has key access in organization. And now, how do you achieve that, though? I think you have to put yourself in a space where you can be seen and realize that the sponsorship is a relationship of choice, and so your sponsor needs to see you worthy of the opportunity to take on this responsibility. And so that's really in your overall presentation, having the capacity to work hard, to work excellently, and always remaining hungry and challenging yourself with new tasks. And so you always want to think about those things when it comes to identifying a sponsor, because those are critical, and you want to be very intentional about that. And then how does that progress in your career? I think sponsors change depending on need and purpose. So every sponsor has a particular purpose in making sure that they are able to elevate a particular individual in the field. And so being able to identify a sponsor that aligns with your career goals and what you want to achieve is very much what you want to look for as you progress in your field.
Excellent. So Terry, how is sponsorship different for men and women?
On so many levels. First, I think Zeb said it very well. This has been around a long time, and it has happened with pale males for an awful long time, but it's not a conspiracy. The reality is people are more comfortable often working with people that they feel comfortable with and are similar with. So white men typically help other white men in the past, and also are in positions of power. So with more women in the workforce and rising to different levels, it's a new game, and there's new rules. And the first thing women need to do is make sure that they are sponsorable. The very basic bar, is doing excellent work, being great at what you do. Amy Hecht from the College of New Jersey will be joining me tomorrow, and she said it really well when I asked her why was she sponsored. And she was sponsored because she did great work all the time. She showed up early. She stayed late. She did whatever it took. She took initiative. Women need to do all of those things, and they need to take credit for their work. They need to speak up and be more visible. We're taught as little girls to be nice, and you can still be nice but be seen. So making yourself sponsorable by showing up dressed appropriately, communicating well, and owning your space.
Great. So Zeb, I'm going to move on to you. How is sponsorship like an investment? And this is really, you do expect something in return for your time in sponsoring. What exactly would you expect?
So part of it is following up on something Terry just mentioned, and she said making certain that you are sponsorable. That means for a person who is willing to sponsor an individual, I want to invest in something that is going to that's going to pay dividends. And so it's important. In my opinion, it's just like an investment, because I'm going to invest my time, my energy, my efforts into an individual's progress or progression through the workforce. So for me, it's important that if I'm going to invest in this individual, that the return is not that I get something personally. Like I'm not in for my personal gain, but the gratification that I receive from an individual working hard and moving up is what I'm looking for. So I invest in a person. Now, so one, you could say, well, that is personal gain. Well, but I'm not looking for a payoff, right? If I can help somebody along the way, then for me, my living won't be in vain. And so that's the payoff that I receive. But the investment is investing time, energy, and effort to helping somebody carry on or be able to move up the ladder and influence in ways that other folks aren't able to do.
Anyone else have anything to add to that?
Well, I think, Tony, we all have a filter when it comes to the people we choose, and it's really important that you identify what that filter is. For me, I'm really interested in sponsoring people who give to other people. If I help you and help you move into a circle that you probably couldn't have gotten into otherwise, or give you an opportunity, when you see someone talented, my expectation is that you give back. And I've seen both happen. The majority of the people that I've worked with and sponsored, it's just part of their nature. And so it continues. So I'm looking in my filter for people who are going to deliver great work and who are also going to reach back and grab somebody else and help them.
Great. David, along your path, sounds like you've had an opportunity to both be a sponsor and ask for sponsorship or identify a sponsor. How does one go about, say you're doing well, you're performing well, and you see a need for a sponsor? How do you approach someone and ask them to be one?
Right. I think that's a great question, but I want to reframe it in the sense that I don't think you can ask for sponsorship. I really think you have to be able to display the capacity to be sponsored. I think that you need to, depending on what that relationship is with that individual, if it starts off as a mentoring relationship and you're looking to be sponsored, I think you need to understand what that shift looks like, because there's a quite a drastic shift there in terms of the demand for work. If you're going to be sponsored, you're going to be putting yourself in a position where you have higher professional standard and higher level of critical thinking that's required for you when you're being sponsored. So I don't think you want to come out and blatantly ask to be sponsored, but rather you want to work hard, show your potential and your ability to be able to excel and have that work ethic and initiative to really fast track your career. And so I think those are some of the things you want to think about in terms of how are you seen to become someone that can be sponsored, and then individuals that are in those roles where they can sponsor, they're going to take on someone that they see with that type of potential. So it's really putting yourself in the space to be seen and excel in the times that you are seen. I think it's just important to demonstrate that and show that you have the ability to excel and have that work capacity that's going to put you over the top of your colleagues and help advance your career. And from that, you'll be able to be sponsored, because senior level administrators will recognize that and want to move forward with your potential.
Tony, I might add that I think it's important that a person become an expert as best they can in their discipline. And if you go back to your first question, if you do good work, if you show up big, as Terry said, and you show up often, and you understand your discipline, then people will want to sponsor you. It's one thing to say, I need or I would like a sponsor. It's another thing for somebody to say, I want to see you do well. I know because of the work that you've done here, you can do greater things. Let me assist you in that work. And as David has said, it can shift from being a mentor, and sometimes people need mentoring until they're ready to be sponsored. And so your mentor can be a sponsor without you asking for that, but by you showing the work that you do, the mentor then converts to a sponsor, and you become the protege versus a mentee, and that person then can move you up the chain or move you along your path quickly.
I also just want to add to that, I think it's important to also demonstrate your level of expertise. And so what does that mean in terms of the different opportunities that you access to showcase your expertise, whether that's presenting at different conferences or publishing, or putting yourself on different committees, so that way you can access those opportunities to display your expertise on a particular topic or area within your organization.
Mm-hmm. And Tony, this is an everyday thing. We see greatness around us all the time, and we all have the power to sponsor. We just have to recognize it. When you think about power, there's the power in your title, there's the power in your expertise. Right now, what's really hot is Title IX, enrollment management. Those are expertise, powerful expertise positions. Tech is very powerful right now still. And then there's relationship power. So all of us have the power to sponsor people using what we bring to the table. For me, most of my power, because I don't supervise people, I don't have a job on campus, is my ability to connect great people with other senior leaders so that they can partner and be effective. Your power, Zeb's power, David's power is very different because they're on campuses. They have the power to appoint people to committees, and to just with a word can say, so-and-so is welcome here. And that's the kind of thing we're talking about, where with their name, someone is welcomed into a room. And once you're given access, you can begin to deliver your skills and your talents and really contribute to what we need to move higher ed forward.
Right. And I think just to piggyback off of Terry's comment, you could be placed in these spaces to display your potential and your ability to be an expert, but you really need to be consistent. You got to display some form of consistency in that role. If you go in there and you present an outcome of a particular project, and then 2 months later you're not having that same energy or that same work ethic, then that's not going to look good in terms of the person that's sponsoring you. You always want to make sure you make your sponsor look good in high-level spaces within the organization.
Great point, David. Good point.
So I'm wondering, do sponsors and proteges need to like each other? Do they need to be friends? Oh, you're all laughing.
I think that's where the major difference between a sponsor and a mentor is. You call your mentor if you want to chat about your weekend or some personal experiences or challenges you might be having in your life, but you go to your sponsor with specific goals and strategies to advance your career and particularly the project that you're working on. The sponsor's investing their time, and so you want to make sure that you're giving them what they want to hear, and quite honestly, it's in more of a business relationship. They're less interested about what you did over the weekend. They're more interested in about what's the outcome of the project that you were most recently assigned to. That's my opinion.
Oh, absolutely. And the people that I sponsor, I believe in them more than they believe in themselves, and they need to work to reinforce my belief in them by delivering. So I don't want to hear whining. I don't frankly want to hear about work-life balance. I want to hear about their aspirations and their assets and how they rocked something that they had an opportunity to engage in. Something, what their next step is, what their plan is, what their goals are. Those are the things that I want to hear, because I want to connect their goals to someone that can make it happen. So I can't think of anyone that I sponsor that I don't like. I think I like all of them, but I want to hear about next steps and progress and engagement.
So for me, I'm not going to sponsor somebody I don't like. That's me. And Terry, you said you can't think of a person that you sponsor that you don't like. Well, that answers a question. If there's something about an individual that I don't like, and I wouldn't want to work with them, then why would I want to put them in a position with somebody? Because that's on me. My word is out there. A little bit different spin than both of my colleagues on the panel, and that is, I do think it's important for an individual to be healthy and to be able to have a good quality discussion about what it takes to be healthy, whether that is on this continuum of balance. People think balance is on a teeter-totter, if you will, and I see it on a continuum. And the individual has to be professionally mature enough to find where that continuum is. Now, we don't have to spend a lot of time in that space, but I'm going to ascertain whether or not that individual is ready to be sponsored and be put in that next level. And for me, it's the holistic perspective. Are you solid? Are you sound? Are you capable? Are you ready? Are you mature? Before I put my name on anybody for anything. So yeah, I want to like you. We don't have to go out and have drinks or party or do whatever people do, have dinner or whatever. But at the same time, there are qualities about individuals that, for me, have to be in place. Where there are a bunch of other people that could sponsor people, but for me, there are certain qualities that I look for, and those qualities are things that I like. So I do have to like the person that I'm going to put my name on, or with, if you will, because that sounds like too possessive. I'm going to work with you.
I also think you want to identify someone that has potential that you might see in yourself. So, when I think of people I want to sponsor, I think about, individuals that have the potential or skill sets that, I saw myself 3, 4, 5 years prior. And so, someone that models the type of distinction that you once carried, with yourself as you came up in the field is something that I also think about. So.
That's true, David. I see that a lot with some of the folks that I work with, and also I've begun looking for people with complementary skills, people who can do things that I can't, that I think are incredible. So adding them to a table that I'm already at adds to the value of the table. And so I've done it in both ways, and I find it really interesting to find people who can bring something different that I would never even thought of.
Yeah. Great.
So I'm going to jump off of our questions for a moment and go to the Twitter sphere. And Tim St. John has a question for you all. It says, where are sponsors looking for people to sponsor? Is there equal access to those spaces, and are good people being missed?
Yes, 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 yes. And that's part of why I'm evangelizing around this whole area, is that we need more people to understand that they have the power to sponsor. So, Tim, you can be sponsoring people right now in your current position, in your work with associations. And so it's just really important that people understand that you can, if you are chair of a committee, invite other people in. And who are you looking for? Who's on your list? I don't go anywhere without a list. And on my list, I have all the people that I'm thinking about. And then I know what their goals are, their aspirations, so I can make connections. So we have a ton of people who aren't doing any sponsorship, who have the power to do it. And we need to get people moving in that area. So there are senior leaders who don't even think about this, but this conversation is opening some eyes, I think, across the country by naming it. and giving people an opportunity to help fast track the so much talent that we have out there.
Anyone else want to weigh in on that?
She answered it for as far as I'm concerned.
Well, you know, one thing I think both Zeb and David and I are all part of a network, the African American Male and Female Summit. I would consider it one of the strongest networks in the country in student affairs because of it has been doing sponsorship well for a very, very long time. And I've always thought if we could cross race and gender and in the same way, use the same methods to fast track people, we would be farther ahead in student affairs and in higher education because they pull their people up and challenge them to rise to a very high level of behavior and quality service. They challenge them and support them through their graduate programs.
Cool. So, Terry, in your presentation, the one I saw in Atlantic City, you talked about the 3 dimensions that make up someone's executive presence. Can you describe what they are?
Well, according to Sylvia Hewlett in the Center for Talent Innovations Research here in New York City, she basically puts it down to 3 things, and they are in order. Gravitas, the ability to own your space and to be decisive, to be assertive. And the second is communication. Your ability to speak and communicate effectively, your emotional intelligence. So gravitas, communication, and the last and most minor is appearance. And we get stuck on that one a little bit. But fundamentally, what I would say about appearance is being put together, looking like you belong in a space. You want to get access to a space and not be distracting, so that you can show people that you can make decisions and you can communicate well and add value. So those 3 things, executive presence, make you visible enough to be chosen and to be sponsored.
So I know this is a touchy topic for some folks. For each of our panelists, what's the one thing that would be a non-negotiable for you that would say, I'm not going to sponsor this person?
Okay, follow through. Their do-say ratio. Your say-do ratio. If you do what you say you're going to do. I spend a lot of time coaching people, and in that coaching process, I see where the follow-through is. Once I see that there's follow-through and quality work, then I can attach my name and feel comfortable with that. Because when I introduce someone or I sponsor someone, it reflects on me. I need people to do what they say they're going to do.
I think for me it's quality. The quality of work allows me to determine whether or not that person, and again, this conversation, depending on how we, there's some diplomacy that goes along with how we're saying what we're saying. We're just speaking straight, kind of very direct, but the bottom line is I want to be associated with people who do good quality work. If you do good quality work, for me, that overlays that whole fact that Terry just talked about, and that is you're going to do what you say you're going to do, or you're going to not say it or not do it. But the quality that you bring to the table is first and foremost important to me.
And I would add to both of what Terry and Zeb mentioned that the representation part is very key. I've always been told you want to dress for the job you want, not for the job you're in. And so although you do want to be authentic and wanting to be able to show up as your true self, you have to understand the high level of professionalism that must be attained if you want to excel and advance in your career. So being able to navigate that, because there could be some challenges along with understanding that dynamic, but also remembering that you want to dress for the job you want, and you always want to, be able to represent your sponsor in a high light. I think it's very important.
So I'm seeing a theme start to emerge as multitasking here on the Twitter feed, and at least two people, Shane Cadden and Brent Smith, have brought up, is this really just favoritism?
It's judgment. It is judgment, and we don't really like that in higher ed and student affairs. But it's a higher good is what I see. We more than ever before need quality people in positions, not based on how long they've been on the chair, but how good they are. I take the sponsorship stuff really seriously because I can put people who deserve it, who may look young but are very talented, into opportunities where they can give value and add value and help students. So, is it favoritism? Yes. I'm going to choose the best people to do the job, or I'm going to connect the best people in terms of their work quality, their do-say ratio, and their talent.
So
it's not fair. I'm sorry. I just would say that nothing is fair.
Right.
It's about getting exposure and getting an opportunity to deliver what you do best, the most.
I also think it's about your network and creating a network beyond your organization, so within your association, your network that you create on social media, whether it's Twitter or other social media platforms. And I think, it's really being able to establish a strong, healthy network of colleagues that are going to be able to pull you in and see the potential in you. Carrie spoke earlier of the African American Male Summit, and I've been a product of the summit since my graduate school days, and because of the relationships that I've formed with senior level administrators in the summit, has given me access to key opportunities, whether in NASPA or within my own organization, and a lot of that is me being able to take certain risks to put myself out there and gain access through the network that I established in those particular spaces. So I think a lot of it has to come down to the individual being willing to and ready to take those healthy, safe risks to put yourself out there in networks that are going to help advance your career.
So whoever asked the question, first I think it's a great question, and I think my colleagues have done a great job with providing some response to the question. This is what I would add to that. And I believe wholeheartedly that if I work hard and put myself in positions to be noticed because of the work that I do and not try to play political games and this person's in this position so I'm going to try to buddy up to that individual, but the quality of work that I put out should speak for me even before I get to that table. Now, the second part of this notion for me of favoritism is I want somebody to look at the quality of work that I present, the hard work that I do, my effort, my energy, and my talent, and find favor with that. Now, if that means favoritism, that's a whole different thing. But you find favor in the work that I do, then that person's going to be willing to sponsor me. And quite frankly, I wouldn't be sitting here if somebody did not find favor in the work that I did and said, you know what, I'm going to put you in this position, and this is what you need to do to excel in that position. Now, you may have gotten here because I'm giving you this opportunity, but you won't stay here if you don't do the work. So it takes hard work, it takes dedication. Finding favoritism is what another person might feel, but for me is I'm going to take control of that space and find favor because of the work that I do. So,
love it. I love that distinction. David, you talked about the network, and I often tell people you need to create your network before you need your network. Mm-hmm. In regards to sponsorship, do we need one sponsor, or do we need a whole array of sponsors? Anyone?
I think when it comes to sponsorship, you want to, like I said earlier, be very intentional about it. And I think, in my opinion, you want to establish at least one sponsor in your organization and one sponsor within your association. So that way, within your organization, you have someone that's going to advocate for you based on your initiative to give you access to high-level organizational responsibilities and projects. And that's going to gain you opportunities to become more competent and craft your expertise within your special area within your organization. And then on the association level, you want to have someone that can sponsor you. So when you're at NASPER and when you're at ACPA and various other student organization associations, you're able to work with that sponsor, and they're able to put you in certain spaces to gain access to different leadership opportunities on national and regional levels. And that's going to put yourself out there as someone that is skilled and has the potential to excel in that particular area. So I think at minimum you want to have at least 2 sponsors, one in your organization and one for the association you belong to.
Anyone else?
Well, I think you can overlay or backdrop your sponsorship with mentors. And so, as David has said, whether it's your organization or your institution, if it's the association and the community, because those are places I think we need to show up big as we move in our careers, in our organization, in our professional associations, and in our communities. And if there's sponsors in those places, then your sponsors are also not competing for your space, your time, your energy, or your efforts. But I can overlay that with a number of mentors that can help me in those areas as well.
And can I just go back? Can I go back a second to our topic of executive presence? Because I think we can't leave that topic without acknowledging some of the navigational challenges that marginalized communities experience when it comes to being able to show up authentic and also maintain this image of executive presence. And so especially folks of color, folks in the LGBT community, women, we are often marginalized and have to think differently about how we show up in different professional settings. And so I think that would be something we don't want to neglect in this conversation and want to acknowledge, because it's something that as student affairs professionals on the senior level ranks and those in mid-level professional positions or even new professionals have to constantly think about when you identify with any of those marginalized identities. And so I think that's something that we want to make sure is not remiss from this conversation.
Absolutely, David. It's I think one of the things that a strategic advantage of having a sponsor is that they tell you the truth.
That's right.
They tell you what other people are saying about you, but not to you. When I'm working with someone, I will give them very clear feedback on communication, gravitas, and appearance that I maybe learned from painfully and had to learn on my own. I read the room for them so that they show up being comfortable with how to engage in the communication and in the meeting, and how to dress so that they fit and are comfortable. I want them to show up feeling powerful and feeling good about what they bring to the table, because they deserve to be there. I've just opened the door.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good point. And Sylvia Hewlett, the author of the book we're discussing today, she recently had an article in the Huffington Post that talked about authenticity and executive presence and how folks from marginalized communities have to navigate and those challenges in showing up authentic, but also maintaining a level of executive presence in their organization. So I think folks should take a look at that.
I think it's important to be able to feel comfortable in your own skin. As Terry just said, show up and be comfortable. If I show up and I'm showing up to fit in and I don't feel like I fit in, then I'll stick out like a sore thumb. So then that would tell me that probably that's not the space I want to be in. As my grandfather would say to me, son, if you go to a baseball game, and excuse the sports analogy, it's just what he told me. If you go to a baseball game, don't expect to see the football on the field. And don't expect to see the yard lines and a goalpost, because it is that other game. And if you don't want to play or see baseball, then don't go to the baseball game. So the bottom line is, it's about authenticity and being comfortable. And if you're not comfortable and you're not true to yourself, then don't go in that space. That's how a sponsor would talk, by the way.
Yeah, and It's also about getting in and letting people see what talent you bring, and not compromising who you are, but getting in the door. And the more power you have and the more talent you bring to it, you see people all the time who, after they've gotten in the door and delivered great results, they do their own thing.
That's right.
So it may be in the beginning that you're wearing the suit that you really don't want to wear. People who really know me know that I hate getting my nails done, getting my hair done, doing the kinds of things that I know I need to do so it's not distracting to other people. My preference is to wear Nike shorts and a t-shirt, but I can't show up like that. And when you've arrived, you can be Steve Jobs and wear a black turtleneck everywhere you go. You can do your own thing once you've arrived, but you have to get in the door first.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. I love it. You guys are lighting up the Twitter sphere here with quotes and nuggets of wisdom. For those who are in a mid to senior level who might be considering taking on a role of sponsorship, we've started to identify some of the benefits, but what are some of the challenges? What's the time commitment? Is this something you need to do on a daily basis, weekly, monthly?
You mean being a sponsor?
Yeah.
There is a time commitment because you're not only investing, it's hard to quantify that because you're investing in an individual's development. So there's some, for me personally, there's some emotional investment. I want to get to know in terms of knowing the individual's strengths and weaknesses, the areas where they need to grow, not because I'm going to judge them, but you don't want to put a person in a space or a place that they're not ready for. So in order to do that, you have to invest some time understanding that individual. So it takes time to invest in people authentically. And so I can't quantify that, but I do know that if you are good at what you do or you want to be good at that, then you need to spend some time investing in those individuals.
And you have to be clear up front from the get-go how you want to be communicated with. The people that I work with know, don't email me and ask me if you can call me. Just pick up the phone. Call me, and we'll talk, and we'll move forward. So identifying how your sponsor wants to be communicated with, and remembering that my parents always would say, who wants what from whom? If you want something from someone, make it easy for them to give it to you. So do it in a way that makes it easy for them to help you, to communicate with you, to give you advice. Ask for feedback. I think that's an area. I give a lot of feedback, and I look to people to make decisions about that feedback that's authentic for them, so that they can make course corrections that feel natural.
So on the other side of the spectrum, maybe for some of the grad students that are watching the show today, is it ever too early to ask someone to be a sponsor? Should our grad students be seeking this out?
Yeah. Go ahead, David.
I think first you want to clearly understand what it means to be sponsored. You don't want to get into a situation where you don't have a clear understanding of what your role is as someone that's being sponsored. So you really want to have a clear understanding of what your roles and responsibility will be in that situation, because you don't want to take backward steps. You want to make sure that you have a clear vision. You know yourself, so that understanding of self is very key, and you have short and long-term goals that you're able to then incorporate into that role as being sponsored. So I think Zeb mentioned earlier, just being able to maybe be mentored first, and then that it can evolve into a sponsoring role is also a way to approach it. But you definitely want to make sure you have core competencies down, and you're equipped with certain skills before you go into that, because you don't want to get yourself into a situation where you have to take backward steps and then look bad upon yourself and also on your sponsor.
So you asked the question earlier, should people seek sponsors, right? And then this question you asked was, should graduate students seek sponsors? So I'll just give you my personal account. When I was a graduate student, we had an assignment to find a mentor on campus, someone with whom we wanted to associate. And I found a mentor who challenged me, who later became my sponsor. But what I did as a graduate student was that I found out the area that I wanted to become content deep in and begin to work hard in that specific area. And so through my hard work, then my mentor then was converted to my sponsor. And so I could say I converted him, actually. But in fact, it was the hard work that I think allowed him to say, I believe in you, and now here's the next step. And so I think it's, as a graduate student, the best advice I could give is find your niche, work hard, become content deep, become a content specialist, find individuals who can mentor and work with you. Those individuals later on, I think, will then become your sponsors.
Adding value is the best way to develop your network and the opportunities to become visible enough to be sponsored. This isn't about us as individuals. This is about making the field better, serving students at a higher level. So if we're giving people opportunities, it's opportunities to work in ways that share their skills and talents with the rest of the academy and bring student affairs into the front about just really giving people the opportunity to shine and serve students at a high level and build what we're doing, build the work.
I also think for graduate students specifically, it's important to volunteer. Volunteer your time when you're trying to learn what student affairs is all about, and you might be engaged in an assistantship, but don't let that be your only experience. Get some experience in other areas and really, you know, engage yourself in opportunities where you can volunteer and put yourself in spaces to be seen. So, for example, if it's volunteering at NASPA at the registration table, or helping out with evaluations at a conference, and just putting yourself in spaces where you may meet that next person that's going to sponsor you and give you that next opportunity is really what it's all about.
So I'm going to bounce off that. Joe Janice wrote that maybe there's not a secret recipe, but if I'm a grad that's not on social media and I can't afford to travel to a conference, what are some other ways I can get recognized for good work? And let me start with a story. Every year our grads go and do exit interviews before they move on to the different conferences for a job, and I always ask them, what's your superpower? What are you better than anyone else at in the room? And 99% of the time they answer it and they say, I'm great with students. Right? And they think that's the distinguishing feature, and that's certainly a great quality to have, but we all know that everyone else in the room also thinks that they're great. Terry, you talked about Title IX as an area to focus on to become an expert in. In all of your experiences, what are some other areas that you said, oh, this is important that we have this within our division, and I need an expert, a content expert area in this particular area?
I really saw this stuff emerging. When I was in graduate school, I thought I was so smart. And I think I've never been smarter than I was in graduate school. But the reality of the game, when I was in graduate school, there was nothing I could do better than a vice president. But the game has changed. We're changing things so quickly. When social media and Twitter and communication systems and channels changed, there became something that graduate students or people who were savvy enough to learn the channels could do differently than some of their vice presidents. So they could add value in a unique way. And that's what I think folks need to think about. What can I do that would add value to our core work and what we're doing in our place at the academy, in the academy? What are we doing where we can add value every day? And right now what's hot is how can we end the whole sexual violence? How can we communicate and get students to listen to us so that they're proactive, they're active bystanders? In graduate school, I was never taught how to forecast a class or crunch big data. So we have a whole generation of student affairs, admissions, and enrollment people who were never taught that. That's a special skill, and if you have it, you want to be sharing it and you want to be talking about it, or you want to be learning it. That grad student who said they're not on social, that's a mistake, because social is communication, and you have to learn how to communicate with your stakeholders. So I would start that grad student right there in developing a presence, and if you can't get to conferences, it is the best thing there is. So other hot topics or hot areas within student affairs, Zeb, David, anything that comes to mind?
Well, one of the things that I would say is that I was in graduate school when social media wasn't even about, I mean, the cell phone was this big when.
We didn't have cell phones when I was in graduate school.
Well, you're right about that. In fact, I remember when they started talking about this thing called email, and I'm like, I am never going to do that. And here's the other thing. I was at a conference 4 years ago, and I heard a gentleman talking about social media. And the thing he said to me was, if you want to be relevant, you need to understand what this is all about. But there still goes back to the first thing you said, Tony, and that is you still need to be able to be competent. All right, and what do you do well? If we start talking, if I get on this soapbox about what we talk about in student affairs and I love students and this kind of thing, if we cannot talk about the skills and the competencies that we develop, that we learn, that we teach, then we're never going to be relevant in the academy. So what do I do well when it comes to the skills and the competencies, whether it's interpersonal, intrapersonal, whether it's critical thinking? Be able to talk about those learning components, those cognitive non-academic learning components. But beyond that, as Terry has said, what can I do to add value, right? So social media is key, it's huge, but there was a time when that wasn't there, and it still goes back to understanding the discipline and being competent in the work that you provide each and every day, in my opinion.
And I would just add that, you know, for the grad student that sent the question, it's okay to be in that space right now, where you might not be fully engaged in social media, or you might not feel comfortable communicating with people, or you may not have, you know, access to certain conferences. It's okay. It's good to acknowledge that and to understand yourself in that capacity. But I would encourage you to start small. So you may not be able to attend a national conference, but there might be some regional and local conferences in your area where you can have access to, and then potentially joining a committee within that particular region, and then that could lead to some national opportunities down the road. So you don't always need to think big when it comes to this opportunity. That there are regional things and local things that you can engage in that can allow you to be seen and get access to help advance your career. And I think that's my advice to you in terms of how you want to formulate and frame your experience as a grad student. Is look on the local level as well and the regional level to develop professionally.
And I would add to that, you don't have to talk. Just watching conferences. There are lots of conferences that I would love to go to. The Society for Training and Development has amazing things, and I can't afford that. But I can watch it, and I can engage, and I can talk to people, and I can read the program and read about. I can see the presentations and the highlights from big name speakers who are doing great work in other fields. So listening here is just as important as speaking.
I love it. It's a great point. Everyone thinks that we have to go to these big, expensive national conferences, and there are lots and lots of regional, local opportunities, and certainly opportunities like this online to learn it. And I can see all the engagement happening on the Twitter chat right now, and there's some vice presidents in this Twitter chat as well. So great opportunity. Josie Alquist talked about the fact that she met all people on this panel first through Twitter, first through social media. And I want to be clear, it wasn't a grad student who asked that question. It was probably the most prolific tweeter in student affairs, Joe Janice, who asked that question. He was just putting it out there. But we all know he's one of the most prolific tweeters, and and also an advocate for folks taking advantage of local opportunities to connect. So I want to be cognizant of our time, and I want to finish off by asking each of you one last question. Looking back on your career, what is the one thing that you might have done differently, and what are some final words of advice you have for our viewers? Anyone?
Well, I would do so many things differently. One lesson I learned painfully and often was that not everyone needs to know what I think. That there's time, place, and manner. That I need to filter my immediate response, and sometimes I still need to do that. So advice to the audience, and thanks for listening, first of all, and second, read the book, because you have to read these books and sort of get your own takeaways and figure out what works for you. I give a lot of advice to folks, but I give it in sort of a cafeteria style. Take what you like and leave the rest behind. Own something and act on it. It's time to stop thinking and start doing. You've thought about it enough. Now choose something that feels authentic for you and move yourself forward, because we need you to deliver great results in student affairs now more than ever.
Great.
I would challenge everyone that wants to be a sponsor and to be sponsored is to really spend time to be self-reflective first. Really get to know yourself and be authentic in understanding who you are and what experiences and what identities you bring to the table, because you want to make sure you're clear of yourself before you put yourself out there for someone to help guide you down your career path. And so for me, it really wasn't until I attended the Social Justice Training Institute, which is commonly known as SJTI, where I had the opportunity to get a clear understanding of the importance of self and how does that show up in the workplace. And for me to be a sponsor or to be sponsored, I have to have that clear understanding of authenticity and how I show up and how I perform in my role. And so that would be something that I would have wished I spent time earlier on in my career, just being more self-reflective in that manner. Because as Dr. Jamie Washington says, one of the faculty for SJTI, he says it's always important to show up authentic because it creates a space for others to do the same. And so we want to make sure that as sponsors or individuals that are being sponsored, that we're in that space of authenticity and we're able to frame our experience based on who we are and the beliefs and values that we bring to the table. And just a word of advice that I would provide listeners today is just to, when you're at bat, always hit a home run. I think that's my motto, and that's the mindset that I work toward when I'm in my career and thinking about how I want to move forward, is to always hit a home run when you're at bat and do the best you can with what you have.
For me, I think, Tony, I think that I wish I had listened more. Terry said it earlier. I knew everything, and my father would always say to me, "Son, some people say experience is the best teacher," but then he would say to me, "But a word to the wise is sufficient." And as I've gotten older, I began to subscribe to the notion that a word to the wise is sufficient. And David said, when you're at bat, hit a home run. If you can't hit a home run, get on first base and let your sponsor sacrifice and get you around to second, third, and bring you home. And I think the words of advice that I would give to anybody listening, first of all, again, I would thank all of you who listened, and thank you, Tony, for inviting me to be a part of this incredible panel. But the word of advice would be to sometimes it's enough of the conversation. And as Terry said, start acting. Quit talking and start acting. Don't worry so much about how many people favorites the tweet or likes what you post. Get the work done. That'll show up. The sponsor will take you to the next place.
Wow, I could talk to you all for another few hours, and I'm sure again by our Twitter account today lots of people are engaged in this conversation. Thank you. I know you're all very busy folks. I really appreciate you taking out the time today to both navigate the technical challenges of getting on the show and participating in such a frank conversation. I'd also like to thank Robin Janice for managing the back channel today and lots of traffic as our air traffic controller. And I'd like to urge those of you who are in the metropolitan area, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, and beyond, to check out Terry's panel tomorrow at NYIT's Broadway Auditorium for another all-star cast of guests. I know I'll be taking the ride out there in the morning to hear the wisdom of some real pillars of the profession. We've got Ed Cabellin, Ken Elmore, Salvador Mena, and Patrick Lugg are just a few of the folks that will be live, and an opportunity for you to go talk to them in person at this auditorium. I'll be returning in mid-November, and on December 10th, something to mark, another great show with my friend Eric Qualman and Ken Elmore will be on that show as well, and perhaps a surprise guest that we're negotiating with now. For those of you who don't know, Eric Qualman wrote Socialnomics, Digital Leadership, and What Happens in Vegas Stays in YouTube. Also, please check out Heather Shea Gasser's upcoming show on accessibility and serving students with disabilities on campus, which will be broadcasting live on November 5th. Please find me on Twitter for more information and details of upcoming events. Until then, my name is Tony Duty. Make it a great week, and thanks again for watching. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Bye, Zim.